My name is Rachel Bennett, and when I was 18 years old, my own mother gave me a choice. Your sister or the door. I chose the door. The silence in that kitchen was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. My mother stood with her arms crossed, waiting for me to break. My father stared at his coffee cup like it held the answers he refused to give me. And my sister, Melissa, sat at the table smirking, already knowing she'd won before I'd even answered. I grabbed my backpack. I didn't cry. Not yet. That was the night I learned something that would shape the rest of my life. In my family, love was never unconditional. It was a transaction, and I had just stopped being useful. Growing up, I was the responsible one. That sounds like a compliment until you realize what it actually means. It meant when Melissa crashed the car, I was the one who picked up extra shifts to help pay for repairs. It meant when Melissa failed a semester of community college, my college fund quietly shrank to cover her fresh start. It meant my needs were negotiable and hers were law. I worked 2 jobs starting at 16, mornings at a diner before school, weekends stocking shelves at a hardware store. Every spare dollar went into a savings account with one purpose: nursing school. I wanted to help people. I wanted a life that was mine. By 18, I had almost $11,000 saved. I remember checking that balance the way other teenagers check social media, obsessively, proudly. It wasn't just money. It was proof that I could build something out of nothing, that hard work actually meant something. Then one evening, I overheard my mother on the phone. "Don't worry," she was saying. "Rachel's fund will cover it. She won't even notice." My stomach dropped. I confronted her the next morning, my voice shaking. "What did you mean, my fund will cover it?" She didn't even flinch. She just looked at me and said the words that would end our relationship as I knew it. "Melissa needs a car. Family helps family, Rachel. You'll figure something out. You always do." That's when I understood. This wasn't a conversation. It was an announcement. My savings were already gone in her mind, just a matter of paperwork. I asked her one question. "When were you going to tell me?" She looked at me like I was the one being unreasonable. She slid a piece of paper across the table. I didn't even need to read it to know what it was. My hands were shaking, but my eyes were steady. "Sign it," my mother said. "It just says you agreed to help your sister. That's all." I picked it up. It wasn't a request for help. It was a voluntary gift agreement, my signature confirming that I had chosen to give my entire savings account to Melissa. No pressure. No coercion. Just generosity on paper. "I didn't agree to anything," I said. "You took it. There's a difference." My mother's face hardened. "Don't be dramatic, Rachel. This family has sacrificed for you too. Or did you forget who paid for your braces? Who drove you to work every single day?" I looked at my father. I needed just one person in that house to say this was wrong. He kept his eyes on his coffee cup, silent as always. His silence was its own kind of answer. "Dad," I said, "please." Nothing. Not even a glance. That's when my mother said the sentence that would replay in my head for years. "You're the strong one, Rachel. You'll be fine. You always land on your feet." It wasn't a compliment. It was permission. Permission for them to keep taking, because I would always absorb the damage quietly. I set the pen down without signing. "If you won't sign it," my mother said, voice flat and final, "then there's the door." I looked at Melissa. She wasn't even looking at me. She was checking her phone, already scrolling past this moment like it meant nothing. 3 years of double shifts, skipped birthdays, and quiet sacrifice, and to her, I was just an inconvenience being resolved. I walked upstairs, packed one backpack with clothes, my birth certificate, my social security card, and the acceptance letter to nursing school I hadn't told anyone about yet. I didn't take anything sentimental. There was nothing left in that house that felt like it belonged to me anyway. When I came back downstairs, nobody stood up. Nobody said wait. My mother crossed her arms and watched me leave like she was waiting for a scene that never came. I walked out the front door into the cold evening air, and I heard it click shut behind me. Not slam, just closed. Final. Ordinary. Like I was taking out the trash instead of leaving my entire childhood behind. I stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, waiting for someone to come after me. Nobody did. Not that night. Not for 5 years. The first night, I slept on a bench at the bus station because I didn't want to burden anyone with a phone call at midnight. I remember counting the ceiling tiles just to keep my mind from spiraling. By morning, I called the one person who had never let me down, my best friend from work, Dana. She didn't ask questions. She just said, "Come over. The couch is yours as long as you need it." That couch became my home for the next 8 months. I picked up more shifts at the diner. I applied for every scholarship I could find. I filled out financial aid forms alone, at midnight, after 12-hour shifts, because there was no one left to help me. My acceptance letter to nursing school sat on Dana's coffee table like a promise I refused to break. There were nights I studied in my car in the parking lot of a 24-hour laundromat because it had free Wi-Fi and I couldn't afford data on my phone. There were nights I ate crackers for dinner because rent came first. There were nights I cried so hard I couldn't breathe, not because of the money, but because nobody had even tried to stop me from leaving. That silence hurt worse than the theft ever did. I remember one night specifically, finals week, second semester. I'd failed a practice exam. I sat in my car, exhausted, and for 1 week moment, I thought about calling home. Just to hear a familiar voice. Just to see if anyone missed me. I didn't call. Something in me knew the answer already, and I wasn't ready to hear it out loud. So instead, I studied harder. I picked up a second job as a caregiver for an elderly veteran named Mr. Whitfield, who paid me not just in money, but in something I hadn't had in years: kindness without conditions. He used to tell me, "The people who walk away easy were never carrying you to begin with, sweetheart. They were just standing on your back." I didn't understand what he meant until years later. Slowly, painfully, I built something. I graduated nursing school with honors. I got a job in pediatrics, the ward that needed nurses who understood what it meant for a child to feel unseen. I saved for an apartment, then a car. Then, for the first time in my adult life, I saved money that was actually mine, with no one else's name attached to it. 5 years passed like that. Quiet, independent, whole. No birthday calls, no holiday texts, not one message from my mother, my father, or Melissa. I stopped waiting for the phone to ring. Then one Tuesday night, it finally did. The caller ID showed my parents' house number. 5 years of silence, and suddenly, at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, it lit up my screen like nothing had ever happened. I stared at it for 3 full rings before I answered. "Rachel!" My mother's voice was shaking, wet with tears. Not "how are you?" Not "I'm sorry." Just, "Rachel, your sister needs you." Of course she did. It was never about me. It never had been. "What's going on?" I asked, keeping my voice flat, professional, the same voice I used at the hospital when a parent was panicking and I needed the real information, not the hysteria. She wouldn't give me a straight answer. "It's an emergency. You need to come home. Tonight." Something in her tone didn't sit right. Desperation, yes, but also something colder underneath it. Calculation. I didn't drive over. I made calls instead. First to a friend who still lived in town. Then, when that led nowhere solid, to the County Child Services office the next morning, using the professional credibility 5 years of nursing had earned me. What I learned made my hands go cold. My 6-year-old niece, Emma, Melissa's daughter, a child I had never even met, had been left home alone overnight while Melissa was at a casino with her boyfriend. A neighbor heard her crying through the wall and called the police. Child Protective Services had opened a case. There was a hearing scheduled. Melissa was at risk of losing custody entirely. And that's when it clicked into place, why they called me after 5 years of nothing. I had exactly what they needed: a clean record, a stable job, a house that would pass inspection. My mother's plan, I later learned, was for Emma to be placed with me on paper, while quietly continuing to live under my parents' roof, so the family could keep collecting the benefits and avoid scrutiny. I was never being asked to help Emma. I was being asked to be a shield. Again, I sat in my car outside the hospital after my shift, engine off, hands on the wheel, and I actually laughed. Not because any of it was funny, because for the first time, I understood the shape. Of my entire childhood, I hadn't been the strong one. I had been the backup plan, the insurance policy, the person who absorbed consequences, so no one else had to. But this time, there was a real child at the center of it. Not a car, not rent money, a little girl. And that changed everything. I called the caseworker back the next morning and said one sentence that would end up rewriting the rest of my life. "I'm not doing this for my family. I'm doing this for Emma." I filed to become her legal guardian. Not a placeholder. Not a paper arrangement. For real. The custody process took 3 months. Home inspections, interviews, background checks. I turned my spare room into a bedroom fit for a 6-year-old. Soft yellow walls, a bookshelf, a night light shaped like a moon. The first weekend Emma stayed with me, she barely spoke. She asked permission before sitting on the couch, before opening the fridge, before touching anything at all. "What happens if I break something?" she asked quietly one afternoon, holding a plastic cup like it might explode. "Then we clean it up together," I told her. "That's all that happens." She looked at me like no one had ever said that to her before. A few days later, cleaning her room, I found a small backpack hidden under her bed. Inside, 2 outfits, a toothbrush, a bag of crackers, and a stuffed rabbit missing one eye. "I keep it packed," she whispered when I asked, "so it doesn't hurt when they forget me somewhere." I had to leave the room so she wouldn't see me cry, because I knew exactly what that backpack meant. I carried one, just like it, out of my parents' house at 18. At the final custody hearing, my mother showed up uninvited, mascara streaked, begging the judge to keep the family together, meaning keep Emma at her house, with me listed only on paper. My father sat beside her, silent as ever. Melissa didn't even show up. I stood up and told the judge everything. The theft, the 5 years of silence, the real reason they'd called me. I wasn't loud. I didn't need to be. I simply told the truth, and the truth did the rest. My mother turned to me in the hallway afterward, voice sharp with panic. "You're destroying this family, Rachel. After everything we did for you." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I felt nothing but calm. "You didn't do anything for me," I said. "You did things to me. There's a difference. You taught me that yourself." I walked away. This time, I didn't wait to see if anyone followed. The judge granted me full legal custody. Melissa lost her parental rights pending further review. My parents, it turned out, had co-signed loans in Melissa's name for years to cover her debts. Money my mother had always insisted wasn't the same as what she'd taken from me. When Melissa's chaos finally caught up with her, those debts came due, and there was no one left to bail anyone out. My parents lost the house 18 months later. I heard about it secondhand. I felt nothing but distance. Today, Emma is a teenager. That old backpack still sits in her closet, but now it's filled with swimsuits and sunscreen for summer camp, not emergency supplies for a night she might get forgotten. Every time I see it, I remember Mr. Whitfield's words, "The people who walk away easy were never carrying you to begin with." They called me the strong one because it meant they never had to carry anything themselves. I finally understood. Real strength isn't carrying everyone else's weight forever. It's knowing exactly when to put it down and choosing yourself instead.